I'm a believer that this team's going to win the national championship.
Something stupid is coming out of his mouth. I don't know. Maybe it's just my age.
He needs his vote pulled immediately. And of course, yes, a season like this has to have a name.
Let's talk about something good about Justin Frank. What are you doing?
The season of dreams. Ohio State, my guys, are either the best or the second best program in the history of college football.
This guy is a bonehead. They love him.
I question your judgment as an adult. I really do.
I was a total hater. I know that for a fact, and I just don't get it.
Get us back our sleeves.
And say, bring me that. That's the one I want. I don't know how long I'm going to be able to look. Every time I see myself say, give me back our sleeves, it makes me irritated again. 20 years next year that we took off the greatest sleeves in the game off of the jersey and replaced it with the helmet stripe. Maybe I should just remind you guys every morning until somebody jumps on board with me and helps me fight the good fight. Please help me fight the good fight, for crying out loud. Good morning, everybody. Great to see you. No live show today as I'm in the restaurant business, right? And there are certain days of the calendar year, particularly in an election year for this, in this case, when a day really affects business in a big way. Election day, always one, but for a presidential, it's bananas. So Gonna need to do this one on a recording. Unfortunately, we won't be able to do our jucking around or our comment section for our immediate feedback, which I like so much. And I appreciate everybody's feedback yesterday on my new intro, which I really like. But wanted to come on today because there is the big night tonight. The playoff rankings come out for the first time ever. We're going to see the 12-team playoff rankings. Now, these are just going to be, we know how they're going to seed this thing, right? Number 1, 2, 3, 4 are going to be the top 4 ranked conference champions. But for tonight's purposes, it's going to be a ranking like they always do. It's not going to be, number 3 is not going to be the top rated ACC team. It's just going to be a straight 1 through however the hell far down they want to go. But I decided to go ahead and put mine together because, I just wanted a little point of reference as we started this thing, how I was thinking as these teams stack up now before they put out their official ones, to see where my kind of logic is stacking up with theirs. A lot of times we see over the course, and the first one's huge because we see their initial thought process with things. And generally, we can follow their patterns and see kind of as we go along what matters to them most. So by the time we get down to crunch time, if there are some tight ones, we kind of got an idea of how they're going to go by it. And we've been through this enough times. Usually there's some sound logic as they go. Last year was a little different. Last year, we thought we had a beat on what they were doing, and they kind of flippity flopped it a couple of times there at the end. Some goofy rankings, and it was just a little off last year. I don't expect it to be like that this year because they don't want to deal with another incident like they had with Florida State, where they kind of made them feel like it was going to be all good there towards the end. And then, in fact, it was not. But, hey, Mike Norvell and Florida State are, I think, 1-8 now, guys. That's too funny, man. I mean, honestly, that moment took down the whole program. It took the program down. It's garbage. They've still got to play Notre Dame. I think they're going to finish the season with 2 wins. I think they do play an FCS team second to last game of the season. A 2-win season from a guy everybody was calling a top 5 head coach heading into the season, and a team that went 13-0 in the regular season last year. It's unbelievable. It really is. I can't remember ever seeing a story quite like it. But anyway, let's get to it. I'm going to start with the first 4 out, right? So we're going to go teams 13, 14, 15, and 16. Number 16, I've got out of the Big 12, Iowa State. Unfortunately, Matt Campbell's boys were undefeated heading into last week. They lost to Houston. The Cyclones, they're a pretty good team this year, not like a traditional Cyclones team. They're passing the ball a little more. They're not so, they used to just be a real grind it out, muck it up, make it ugly kind of Big Ten looking team. They got some firepower now with the good looking quarterback named Rocco Becht. And he's a favorite around my house as I've got a son named Rocco. So we have some good time yelling Rocco, Rocco, like that. That's how we do it. But anyway, that's what I do to my kid. So good times with that. But the loss to 6-3 Texas Tech. Not a horrible loss. Their best win was Iowa, and Iowa is currently kind of power rated about number 35 in the country, so it's a decent win. But their next best win after that, just UCF at 4-4. So that's not such a hot resume. They're going to need to keep winning. Number 15, LSU. LSU, a 2-loss team. They lost right in the beginning of the season to USC in a game that I commend them for playing. So if it comes back around to the end of this thing and they are kind of up against somebody in the end, somebody that didn't challenge themselves, I'm not going to punish them a ton for that loss, not as much as I would a conference loss, because they challenged themselves out of conference. However, that USC team, which we thought was going to be kind of a quality looking loss back then, USC's gone on to go 2-5 in the Big Ten since then. So it's not really a quality loss, but I do want to make sure that we are not penalizing people as much with an out of conference loss that they challenge themselves with as we would with an in-conference loss that everybody else plays. I want to incentivize those big games being scheduled in the beginning of the season. We'll talk about that more as we go. They also lost to Texas A&M in conference. Their wins that could potentially help them in this whole ordeal here. They beat Ole Miss, who is, around a top 15-ish team. I think they're 19 or so right now, and they're going to keep climbing. Actually, never mind. They got Georgia this week. They're going to go down. But also South Carolina. They beat South Carolina, which is looking like a more quality win now, as they now have 5 wins on the season. Number 14, Texas A&M. Texas A&M, also a 2-loss team, just 1 loss in the SEC. And their losses came to right in the beginning of the season for them as well. Number 5, Notre Dame, in a really close game. And at night at South Carolina last Saturday, South Carolina, again, a 5-win team. So not a horrific loss, but nonetheless, 2 losses, they're wins. They had a really nice win against LSU, and they beat ranked Missouri, dominated ranked Missouri. So that's a pretty good resume. Number 13, out of the Mountain West, 7-1, Boise State. Their 1 loss coming by 3 points to the number 1 team in the country, Oregon. Their best win, UNLV. Also, they beat 7-1 Washington State. So a couple of pretty nice wins for our top-rated team out of the group of 5, Boise State, which we put at number 13. Our number 12 team from the ACC, Southern Methodist University, the Mustangs, looking sharp, man. A 3-point loss to top 10 BYU, the only blemish on their schedule, and they beat ranked Louisville and ranked Pitt. They got a dynamic quarterback, a dynamic running back. This is a team that can potentially compete in this thing. I really believe that. Number 11, 6-2 Alabama. They lost to Tennessee, a top 10 team, and they lost that shocker at Vanderbilt. Not so shocking anymore, as we can see that Vanderbilt is a pretty decent team. Maybe even kind of good. They're in the top 25, and they just got done beating Auburn, a really close one to Texas. But the win against Georgia, obviously Georgia back in the top 3 now. That's a huge win. They also beat 5-3 South Carolina. Here's South Carolina propping somebody else up. They beat South Carolina and Georgia. Good enough for number 11 at this point. Number 10, Notre Dame. This one's interesting, as Notre Dame is 7-1. We had the pathetic loss to Northern Illinois. Pretty much wrote them off. We've watched them. They don't look that good. But this resume, which we thought in the beginning of the year, all right, these guys are going to play 3 big games, right? They're going to play Texas A&M. They're going to play Florida State, and they're going to play USC at the end of the year. It's a 3-game schedule for Notre Dame. And we also mocked them for having 2 of the military academies and a MAC team. So the MAC team beat them. The 2 academy schools were ranked, and FSU and USC are horrific. So a whole flip on its head here. But they go ahead and they beat Louisville, right? Ranked. They beat Navy. They were ranked. They're going to get to play Army. They're going to be ranked when they play them. So all in all, with that win against Texas A&M, it's a pretty damn good looking resume, truth be told. The thing is, I just don't think they're that good, but I do think they're going to be there, and they're really looking in line to get that number 5 seed, maybe number 6 at the worst if they win out. which they'll be favored heavily to do so. Number 9, out of the Big Ten, Penn State, 7-1. They're lost to top 5 Ohio State at home by 1 touchdown. Ranked number 6 in the AP poll, and I just disagree with that. This is a team whose best win is at home to Illinois, a team that was ranked at the time. They're not anymore. They're just not that good. We know who they are. They also beat West Virginia in the beginning of the season, and that looked pretty good for a non-conference game. And West Virginia now 4-4. They also beat USC, which some are calling a big game. USC, again, 2-5 in the Big Ten. None of these are very impressive at all. They had a very tight game against Bowling Green out of the MAC, and that's a pretty good MAC team this year. But you're Penn State, and that was at Happy Valley. The schedule has not given them an opportunity to get any other big wins outside of the Ohio State game, and they didn't take advantage of it. You have to take advantage when you get an opportunity to have a big win. If you've got no other big-time games on your schedule, and looking forward, they don't. They're at the mercy of everybody here. Number 8, Tennessee. Tennessee is 7-1. They got a loss at Arkansas. Their best win, top 10 Alabama. Number 7, Texas. I have to ignore the fact that I know that Texas is loaded with talent here. They were propped up at the beginning of the season heavily by that win up at Michigan. Slowly, we found out who this Michigan team is. Their next best win, Vanderbilt. Their next best win after Michigan is Vanderbilt, ranked number 25. Really kind of being propped up at this point because they played Texas so close after that win against Alabama that they had. This Texas team lost in embarrassing fashion at home by 2 touchdowns in a game where they intercepted the opposing quarterback Carson Beck because he sucks 3 times. We're not going to see these guys outside of the top 4 when these rankings come out. I really don't think they should be in that top 4, but they'll be in there. But when you read that resume, like, that's nothing impressive at all. But we know they're chock full of talent, so they'll get the benefit of the doubt. And I'm not complaining about it because they give the same thing to my guys. You know what I mean? So it is what it is, but it's really not fair. My number 6 team out of the ACC, the Miami Hurricanes, undefeated. Their best win at Louisville. The rest of their schedule, not so hot. You had the controversial call at the end of the Virginia Tech game. A lot of people think that that should be a loss. I kind of felt like that was the right call, but it doesn't matter. The point is, it was a really close game against a team you shouldn't be that close with. Then the next week, they went out to Cal. Pretty lackluster performance. Had to come raging back in the end. A couple of questionable calls there as well. Kept them in it, and they end up getting the win out there. But I'm really nitpicking. The point is, they're undefeated, but you got to nitpick because there are a couple other undefeateds. And I think the other ones belong ahead of Miami. But the difference between them and number 5, Indiana, very, very small. Indiana, out of the Big Ten, Indiana's demolition of every other team this year by more than 2 touchdowns is extremely impressive. We talked about their schedule yesterday. Indiana, at this point, has not beaten a team that has a winning conference record in the Big Ten, and they're out of conference, 3 cream puffs, all 3-6. They've played absolutely nobody, but to play everybody, even if they're absolutely nobody, and beat them all by 14 points. The first time they trailed was week 10. They got down 10-0 against Michigan State and then scored 47 unanswered. That's incredibly impressive, man. Incredibly impressive. But their schedule is only going to give them the opportunity going forward to get one big win. That's Ohio State. That's it. If they don't get that big win against Ohio State, their next best win is going to be Michigan. Michigan's probably going to finish 6-6 this year. If Indiana at 11-1 ends up in a tight squeeze against someone in the end, if it's, okay, we got this 2-loss team on the bubble in Indiana right here, they might lose out because that schedule's so weak, because they scheduled such a week out of conference. You live and learn. You got to schedule good out of conference games. Now, our top 4 teams in the Juckonbucks inaugural rankings. Number 4, Brigham Young University, unbelievable. BYU, undefeated. They beat top 15 SMU, and they destroyed a ranked Kansas State. 2 ranked wins. They beat K-State 38-9. 8-0 with 2 ranked wins, far better than Texas, who is 7-1 with one ranked win. Now, remember that when they roll that crap out tomorrow, and Texas is ahead of BYU. They shouldn't be. BYU's resume is better than Miami's. Miami just one ranked win. Remember that when they put Miami ahead of BYU. I certainly suspect both of them will be ahead of BYU. Should not be that way, but it will be. Number 3, the Ohio State Buckeyes. Some people are making a case for them at number 2. I don't think that's the right case. I'll go over it. So you got a loss by 1 point to number 1. You got your best win at number 5, top 5 Penn State's house by a touchdown. Your next notable win, power rated team number 36, Iowa. Georgia's resume, their loss to top 10 Alabama, big wins, number 19 Clemson, 34-3, and number 1 at the time, Texas, by 2 touchdowns at their house. So what's more impressive? To me, the best win, Georgia had the better win than Ohio State. I think that beating Texas at night, they were number 1, they're still in the top 5, is more impressive than beating Penn State during the day at Happy Valley by 1 touchdown. Second best win, Texas Clemson. Clemson, obviously not great this year, but just 2 losses, and they beat them 34-3. They're better than Iowa. So the second best win also goes to Georgia in this scenario. As far as the loss, Ohio State has a better loss, no doubt about it. Ohio State has the best loss you could have to the number 1 team by 1 point at their house. In fact, Ohio State has the best loss you could ever have in history, like as far as this goes. Losing to number 1 by 1 point at their house. You can't get a more respected loss than that. It's as respected of a loss as you can have. But we don't judge by losses. We judge by wins. Losses factor in. But the 2 wins are clearly, to me, better by Georgia. So Georgia comes in at number 2. And number 1, far and away the best resume, the team that got knocked in the beginning of the season because it was the game after the Idaho game where they came out and really were looking in shambles. They played Boise State. Boise State, we know what Boise State is. At times they've been really good in program's history, but weren't supposed to be so good this year. Turns out they're really good. Boise State's going to be ranked in the top 15 of these polls when they came out. Oregon beat them by 3. And that's when everybody thought, whoa, this Oregon team isn't who we thought they were. And then they slowly started getting it together. And, they've been clicking on all cylinders for several weeks now. So the Boise State win, the Ohio State win, and then they also had the Illinois win. When Illinois was ranked, they're not going to be ranked anymore. They've fallen out of the poll. But still, for a third victory, that's a pretty damn good one. Most of their games, they've won by a whole lot of points. They appear to be clicking on all cylinders. Far and away the number 1. Okay, so our top 4 teams in order are Oregon number 1, Georgia number 2, Ohio State number 3, number 4 BYU, number 5 Indiana, number 6 Miami, number 7 Texas, number 8 Tennessee, number 9 Penn State, number 10 Notre Dame, number 11 Alabama, number 12 SMU. And the first 4 out, well, number 13 Boise State, they won't be out. Actually, in this case, SMU would be out. Boise would be in. So you would have SMU out, Boise in, Texas A&M at 14, LSU at 15, and Iowa State at 16. A lot of this is contingent on those conference championship games. For instance, if Iowa State is the second-rated Big 12 team and they go to play in the Big 12 championship and they're playing against undefeated BYU, all Iowa State's got to do is win that game and they're in, right? And in that scenario, BYU also gets in for an undefeated regular season in a power conference, no doubt about it. And that's how you're going to get 2 from the Big 12 or the ACC this year. And that might be the only way you end up getting 2. I suppose there's still a chance in the ACC if Miami were to lose 1 and maybe then lose the conference championship, because they'd still be a 1-loss regular season team. If you're an 11-1 regular season team, I don't know though. The resume's weak. It just depends how good everybody else is. But this is going to be a ton of fun. So I want to pull up my bracket from the beginning of the year. This is what I had at the beginning of the year when we did that show. Okay, here's what we did at the beginning of the year. This was from the results of my prediction show, where we had the Big Ten being won by Ohio State and being the number 1 seed. The SEC won by Texas and being the number 2 seed. The Big 12 representative, the champion, Utah, was the number 3 seed. The number 4 seed, the champion of the ACC, Miami. Our at-large teams, number 5, Oregon out of the Big 10. Number 6, Notre Dame. Number 7, Georgia out of the SEC. Number 8, Penn State out of the Big 10. Number 9, Missouri out of the SEC. Number 10, Ole Miss out of the SEC. Number 11, Clemson out of the ACC. And our Group of 5 representative, Boise State. And there you see how it all shakes out in the end. So all in all, I'd say, we're looking pretty good so far for our predictions. Clemson no longer alive, so that's not going to happen. They're alive technically, but it's a really, really long shot. Ole Miss is technically still alive, though they got Georgia this week. A win for Ole Miss would be pretty damn big. Now, our current predictions, how we see this, not predictions, but my personal rankings, this is how that would lay out if that was to be bracketed up. Number 1, Oregon out of the Big 10. Number 2, Georgia out of the SEC. Number 3, BYU out of the Big 12. And number 4, Miami out of the ACC. The number 5 seed, Ohio State out of the Big 10. Number 6, Indiana out of the Big 10. Number 7, Texas out of the SEC. Number 8, Tennessee out of the SEC. Number 9, Penn State out of the Big 10. Number 10, Notre Dame. Number 11, Alabama out of the SEC. And number 12, Boise State, our Group of 5 representative. So what do we got here? 1, 2, 3, 4 SEC teams. 1, 2, 3, 4 Big 10 teams. 1 Big 12, 1 ACC, 1 Group of 5, and 1 independent. This is not chaos. I don't like this at all. That's Hey, man, that's generic and vanilla. I'm not happy with that. I'm not happy with that at all. But I mean, I guess that's the way it's got to be, right? We need that lower rated team in the ACC and the Big 12 championship to win those conference championship games. That's what we need. We also need like Miami and BYU to remain undefeated. And if we can do that, then we can make some chaos happen. So and one more thing I want to hit on today. You can say a lot about the SEC, which I have. One thing I've always admired is the strong leadership from the top, from Mike Slive, then on to Greg Sankey. And as a fan of a team that plays in the Big Ten, I've generally disagreed with what comes out of that the decision makers and the decisions that they make in the Big Ten. Like a lot of the time, I'm just on the other end. The SEC, I usually agree with the stuff that they do. I really do. And chalk another win up to SEC Commissioner Greg Sankey. Faking injuries has been part of football for as long as, I don't know, as soon as they caught on to doing it when tempo offenses became all the rage. And there's no specific rule in the college football rulebook about faking an injury. There is very strong wording about it being unethical to fake an injury at any time during a game, but there's no penalty. The official can't call a penalty and use his judgment, even if he knows you're flopping and it's total garbage. Coaches know this. Some coaches have no shame and employ it a ton. Others, they take a little pride in themselves and won't do it. Like Ohio State did not do it against Oregon. Lane Kiffin, a guy like that, he'll do it as much as he needs to. So the point is, Greg Sankey, he doesn't care that there's not a rule book in college football about it, or a rule in the college football rule book about it. He's had enough of it, and he has let all of the SEC schools know that they will no longer be accepting this at the SEC office. The final line of his memo that he sent to them says, play football and forget the feigned nonsense. Play football and quit the feigned injury nonsense. Here's some more detail from that memo. It covers the two situations that this strategy of fake injuries is commonly employed in. It says when defending against the hurry-up offense, you are to use the allocated team timeouts if you need to stop play, or you may allow the play to continue with the personnel and defensive play call you have in place. And on offense, if the play clock is running out, you may call one of your team timeouts or accept the delay of game penalty. Creating injury timeouts in these circumstances is not acceptable, and it is disrespectful to the game of college football. Bravo, man. Also, the SEC said that they would send any video of obvious fake injuries to the national coordinator. It's presumed that every member of your football program, coaches, staff, student athletes, medical staff, and others are aware of this and understands this policy. Play football, stop the feigned injury nonsense. I love it, man. I love it. So what are the penalties? They're big. They increase each circumstance. The first, the head coach receives a reprimand publicly, and the school has to pay a $50,000 penalty. The second, $100,000. And if it happens a third time, the coach faces a suspension for the next game. That about does it. Case closed, man. There's no way any of these coaches are messing with him on that. No way. So that's all it takes. And like the SEC's rule about transferring within conference in the second portal window, you can't do it. You know, they just do things on their own and that's it. And they get it done. And, that's what it is. I love it. I absolutely love it. I think they probably have more problems with the faking injury thing in that conference than I see other places. But, regardless, he said, knock it off. They're all going to knock it off. And those are some serious fines. So I do really like that. Anyway, my friends. All right, my friends, we won't just have the college playoff football rankings tonight, but Ryan Day will speak at 11:30 today, and our buddy Dylan will be there. Dylan, we will have on tomorrow, as we do every Wednesday, to have a little chit chat about that. And of course, we will go over the college football rankings and any other college tidbits that we want to go over. And I will be back live tomorrow morning. So I will see you guys then at 9:35 tomorrow morning. I hope I'll be there. All right. I'll see you guys then. Juckonbucks out. Hey, it's Juck.
Juck? Who is Juck?
Juckonbucks.
Juckonbucks. Juckonbucks?
Juck.
Juckonbucks.
My guy, Juck.
Juckonbucks.
My buddy Juck.
Juck is the Juck.
It's Juckonbucks.
Okay. Juck is junk.
The Juck Eyes.
The Juck Eyes.
Juckonbucks.
Junk. Juck. Not junk. Juck.